Hello, dear students. In today's lecture, we'll discuss clause. Okay, a very important topic of grammar. So, I'll begin. What is clause? So, clause is a group of words which has its own subject and its own predicate. Okay, so clause looks like a sentence, or we can also call it a semi-sentence, where it has its own subject and its own finite verb. Okay, so this is clause. We have two types of clauses. Okay, one is independent clause and the other is dependent clause. So when a clause means when a subject and its finite verb can stand on its own, okay, independently, or when uh, its meaning uh, is complete in itself, and it doesn't depend on some other part of the sentence, when it itself is a sentence, or we can say in that case the clause is an independent clause. So we can also say, what do we infer from this very discussion, that a single independent clause becomes a simple sentence, a sentence, okay, that is complete in its sense, that is complete in itself, or that is complete in delivering, that is, we can say, capable of delivering the complete sense. So in that case, the clause is known as independent clause. Okay, so independent clause. Then the other is dependent clause. So a dependent clause, we can also uh, find its meaning by the very name, dependent clause. Okay, so when a clause which has a subject and its predicate of its own, but it depends on some other clause, that is an independent clause for its meaning. Okay, then the clause is dependent clause. Dependent clause depends on some independent clause for its meaning. Okay, so it becomes the part of a sentence. Okay, when we remove it, when we exclude it from the sentence, its meaning suspends. Okay, or it cannot be able to deliver the complete sense. So in that case, we can say the clause is dependent clause. So clause may be independent clause or a dependent clause. Okay, on the basis of clauses, we also have different kinds of sentences. Okay, we have sentences like simple sentence, compound sentence, and complex sentence. When we have single independent clause, okay, in that case, it forms a simple sentence. When two or more independent clauses, okay, combined together by some conjunctions, or we can say the coordinating conjunctions, then they form a compound sentence. And when we have one independent clause and the other dependent clause, and they both are connected or joined together by some, we can say, subordinating conjunctions or some relative pronouns or adverbs, in that case the sentence is known as complex sentence. Okay, so complex sentence has both the clauses, independent and dependent clause. Independent clause, main clause, okay, that is independent, that can stand on its own, and the dependent clause depends on the main clause or the independent clause for its meaning. Okay, for example, we have a sentence, you may sit wherever you like. So this is a complex sentence, you may sit wherever you like. So it contains two clauses. One is you may sit, which has its own subject you and the verb sit. And we also have another clause, that is wherever you like. In this clause, we have also its own subject you and like, the verb like. So you may sit may stand independently as a simple sentence. Okay, that is independent on its own, and that can stand on its own and can deliver a complete sense. But when we look at the other part of the sentence, the dependent clause, or the subordinate clause, we also know, we also call it the subordinate clause, which is wherever you like. It cannot make sense when it stands all alone. So this sentence, you may sit wherever you like, contains two clauses, independent clause as well as dependent clause, and this sentence is a complex sentence. Now the next thing which we have to discuss is that a dependent clause can play the role of different parts of speech. Okay, so what I mean means a dependent clause sometimes functions as a noun, or sometimes as an adjective, or the other times as an adverb. So we accordingly we call them a noun clause, an adjective clause, or adverbial clause. So when the dependent clause in, we can say, a complex sentence plays the role of a noun, then we call it a noun clause. When it plays the role of adjective, we call it adjective clause, and when it plays the role of an adverb, we call it adverbial clause. Okay, so let's see through examples. First, there is a sentence: I expect that I shall get a prize. Okay, so I have a complex sentence: I expect that I shall get a prize. So in this sentence, the clause that begin with that, so that I shall get a prize is a dependent clause. Okay, but in this sentence, this dependent clause functions as an object to the verb expect. Okay, and accordingly it plays the role of uh, a noun. So we can say that I shall get a prize is a noun clause. Okay, got it? And let's see the other example. We have next sentence: he is the man whom we all respect. So this is the sentence: he is the man whom we all respect. So in this sentence, the clause whom we all respect is a dependent clause which depends on the other part of the sentence for its meaning. Okay, and in this sentence, the clause whom we all respect, okay, describe the noun which is there, man. Okay, we call it antecedent. Okay, so the clause describes the antecedent in noun, and thus functions the role of an adjective. Okay, so in that case we can say that in this sentence whom we all respect is an adjective clause. Okay, playing the role of an adjective, qualifying or describing the noun, the antecedent man. Okay, and adjective clause is also known as relative clause. Okay, so relative clause, adjective clause, both the same thing. So relative clause, why? Because in a relative clause we can see that the dependent clause always begin with a relative pronoun or a relative adverb. Okay, for example, in our sentence whom, we have a relative pronoun, so we can call it a relative clause or an adjective clause. Now the third one means when a dependent clause plays the role of an adverb in the sentence. So in that case we call it adverbial clause. For example, we have the sentence: they rested when evening came. So they rested when evening came. So this is also a complex sentence where we have two clauses: they rested and when the evening came. So when evening came in this sentence is a dependent clause. Okay, and in this sentence, this dependent clause when evening came plays, which tells us about the time. Okay, it plays the role of an adverb of time. So this clause known as adverbial clause. So friends, in this way we can review the lecture, or we can see that a clause is a group of words which has a subject and its predicate. Okay, and they might be of two types. One is independent clause, the other is dependent clause. Independent clause can stand on its own. Okay, it is independent in nature. It is capable of delivering the complete sentence. Okay, and the other one is a dependent clause which cannot stand on its own and which depends on the other part of the sentence. Okay, this is part of sentence, not the complete sentence in itself. Okay, and then we discussed that a dependent clause can function the role of different parts of speech. Basically we have their role as noun, as adjective, or as an adverb. So accordingly dependent clause also known as noun clause. Okay, when it plays the role of a noun, and an adjective clause or relative clause when it functions as an adjective in a sentence, or an adverbial clause when it functions as an adverb in a sentence. So, dear friends, hope you understand the very lecture. Please go through this topic and practice with the sentences, okay, through your own books, and through the examples given in your textbook or in your health book. Okay, so all the best. Take care. Thanks.